What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another New World video. So today I am super excited because we are finally doing the long awaited, highly requested, updated bow spear build video. So I know these build videos can get kind of long, but I'm going to try to keep this one short. So if there's anything that I don't cover that you have a question about, just drop it down in the comments below and I'll get back to you. So jumping right into the build, let's have a look at the stats. Right away you can see that my main focus for this build is the first thing I want to do is hit 50 constitution. And the reason I want to do that is just for the threshold of getting a 20% stronger consumable. And after that, I'm dumping just everything into dexterity as much as possible. You can see there's no purple right now, so I don't even have a food buff running. When I'm going super try hard, I'll even dump a food buff, which is just pure dex food. And the main reason I do this is because for me, this build is primarily focused on the bow. The spear for me is just the backup weapon, but if you're going to be running the spear as your primary weapon and your bow is just kind of, your secondary weapon of when people are running away from you, but you're primarily a melee player, then I would definitely suggest maybe going 300 dex and then dumping as much into strength as possible. But to me, that plays a little bit different because then you have to worry a little bit more about constitution if you're going to be staying into melee range a little bit more. But because the spear is a 2 scaling weapon off of dexterity and strength, you would get more damage out of the spear, stopping at 300 dex and then dumping into strength if you want. But since the bow is a single scaling weapon, I just dump all of my points into dexterity because I want to get that as strong as possible. So for your talent setup on the bow, this is what I'm running. I'm not going to go over every single talent, but there is a couple of things that I do want to mention. Number one being the obvious that I haven't gone with a single upgrade under the poison shot. You'll change poison shot from 10% weapon damage per second to 12% damage. The 2% just isn't enough for me to justify taking this talent. If you're going to be doing a lot of wars and firing poison shot into like a crowd of people, then I could see taking this if you're trying to pad and get as much damage as possible. But for me, doing things like duels, OPR, world PvP, this talent just doesn't do it for me. The next upgrade being direct hit. This actually doesn't apply to the poison if you get a direct hit. It is literally just the damage from the arrow itself hitting the target. And for me, this talent isn't bad, but for me, there's more beneficial talents that we can pick. I always encourage people, if they can get the direct hit on poison shot, to get the direct hit. The extra damage is just going to be great. Like, why would you pass up free damage? But if you're playing against someone who has really good movement, the safe option would just be to fire poison shot at the ground. And the main reason that we're trying to get the debuff up is for this talent right here, Mark, which is just going to increase the damage you deal to that target by 10%. So sometimes just shooting poison shot at someone's feet to get the guaranteed 10% damage for 20 seconds is more worth it sometimes, in my opinion, than trying to greed the poison shot, trying to get the direct hit. I'd rather take those 2 points that I would put into poison shot and go for some mobility. Number 1 being dodge and weave, and then number 2 obviously being archer speed. Now taking these 2, and since you're playing with the bow, when we're talking about mobility and kiting people effectively, it's going to be a lot smoother for you to actually sheath your weapon after a dodge rather than weapon swapping. So if you're trying to run away from someone, don't dodge weapon swap, dodge sheath your weapon. You'll get a better speed bonus and you'll be able to kite out a little bit more effectively. Now jumping over to the hunter tree, I do play true aim as a talent, but in all honesty, I almost never use heavies on the bow. For me, they just take way too long to charge, and I don't like the little delay that it causes your character after you shoot the shot. The only reason I'm playing it is to have enough points in this tree to actually play concussion. So I do want to say that heavy attacks actually do very good damage. So if you can get the opportunity to use one, say you don't have penetrating shot up and someone's sitting there in shooter stance and it's a free hit to start, if you can get the charged heavy attack, by all means do it. You're going to do great damage to them. And if you are someone that uses heavies quite often, I would actually consider taking a look at opening strikes. You could probably drop Hawkeye for it, which Hawkeye is just going to give you a 10% heal if you ever land a headshot. I'm not personally trying to go for headshots with every single shot like I am with the musket using the bow, but having a 10% heal on the damage that I do if I do happen to hit a headshot, to me is just a bonus. But if you wanted to play opening strike, by all means, this is a great talent as well. The only problem that I have with this is that it's only going to be usable when the target's at 100% health. And again, in my last build video, I did talk about people being at 100% health. the issues that I have with that, you know, playing the onyx as your gem inside of your weapon. So for that reason, I don't like taking this talent, but the 20% increase on damage, if you're going to be doing something like duels and you want to start with a heavy, this is definitely a good talent. I've done a couple of duels before where I have played that setup, playing true aim and playing opening strike, getting my heavy to be the first attack that I hit at the start of a duel, and then immediately going into something like a penetrating shot, and I literally can just two-shot someone in light gear. So it's definitely a good combo, and it definitely has a place to be used. And in my 2 cents, it just all comes down to your play style and the type of content that you're doing. So just to talk about your rotation really quickly, it's honestly all going to depend what you're fighting against. For example, things like evade shot, I absolutely love this ability. It's probably one of my favorite ones in the entire game. If I'm fighting something like a great axe, I am specifically going to hold evade shot until I see gravity well to get myself out of it. If someone's using an ice gauntlet and they're pushing in towards me, I know that they're probably going to try to ice wall or ice shower. So if I know I'm going to get hit by it, I'm going to try to save it for that, or I'm going to use that to try to create some space to prevent them from actually getting towards me. Obviously, getting up poison shot as soon as possible to get up that 10% increased damage for 20 seconds on the target is huge. Incorporating in dodges before you use big abilities like penetrating shot is huge. After you dodge for 5 seconds, you're going to deal 20% more damage. You can use this for your basic light attacks as well, for your 300 dex threshold, having that guaranteed crit. And obviously, last but not least, penetrating shot. If you can time this on certain abilities because it does stagger the target when it hits them, you can really set yourself up for success fighting against certain weapon combos. So next up, we have the spear, which definitely went through a little bit of an overhaul a little while ago. And this is probably my favorite setup that I've been using in combination with the bow. There's a couple of different setups right now for this spear that you could run, but to me, this is the build that I've been having the most enjoyment and success with. So again, I'm not going to go over every single talent, but there are some key things that I want to mention to just give my 2 cents on. Number 1 being the final upgrade for the ability sweep. I believe it's pronounced coup de grace. I know this talent is actually really good inside of PvE, but for PvP, I very much dislike it. The animation that it locks you into performing that heavy strike, I personally found that it either gets me killed majority of the time, or the person is spam dodging and I actually don't land the kill because of it, or they're just out of range but the animation still goes off. They were at the end of the sweep. So for PvP, I highly advise that you do not take this talent. I think it has a place in the game, but to me it's not worth taking inside of PvP. With that said though, I do want this talent strong conditioning, and because we're not taking this, I go with defensive stance, but I almost never use the heavy attack on the spear. I'm literally just picking up this talent just so I can get this one down here. So this is the setup that I'm running on my spear. And just to talk about the rotation very quickly, in a perfect situation, you're going to open with sweep if you can and you feel like you're fast enough to dodge behind them, and then use your perforate. That way you get 3 guaranteed crits because they're all backstabs. That is something that I really like to do, but if you don't feel confident in it, or you're pressed on time because you have other people rushing you, just sweeping them and going for the triple perforate is definitely more than enough sometimes. Then obviously going into a vault kick, getting that cooldown reduction to try and restart that combo, and if you need to, just hitting your basic light attacks to try to finish off the kill. Now this can actually be an insane amount of damage, and I absolutely love perforate, the way that it sets you up for some situations, given that it applies a huge rend. You got a damage buff for putting on that rend, the trait inside of the gear that we're going to be taking a look at in a little bit. I feel like the way that I've been playing the spear now, it just flows and feels so much better and smoother than what I used to play when I was playing javelin. Obviously, I would use my javelin off of my kick, but then the cooldown reduction would get messed up, and it was hard to hit javelin off of sweep because you could hit it, you would see the damage number, but if the person was spamming fast enough, they actually wouldn't get CC'd. So I absolutely love this setup and I highly recommend trying it out. And 2 things that I want to mention about the spear, depending on what you're fighting against. Obviously, if someone's running 300 strength and they're going to get that grit on light and heavy attacks, using your sweep first while they're attacking is not going to work out the way that you want it to. So you will have to change your rotation of things, maybe go for a vault kick first, then go for the sweep, then go for the perforate. It will throw off the cooldown reduction a little bit, the way that it works together with aggressive maneuvers and obviously continuous motion, but it at least guarantees you your CC chain and then getting out the damage that you want to. And then the last thing, it also has to do with using vault kick first, but if you're playing against someone using a hatchet and berserk, sweep won't do anything to them. Perforate The knockback from hitting all three or the stagger, that won't apply either. So what I usually do in those situations, if the person is close enough, they have berserk up, I'll try to land the vault kick and then I'll just kite away. Burn out their berserk timer and then re-engage either at a distance with the bow or go back in and push with the spear once berserk goes down. So next, let's talk about gear. Obviously, I'm running light. I personally like the ability to actually roll on my dodge. I know there are a few people who run medium for this setup, and I actually think medium is probably better, especially in things like 1v1s for duels and things like that. But I personally think that my movement is better than my aim, and I'm one of those people that I like to play to my strengths, so I like light. Obviously, the best setup that you can use for light is to have your chest piece be medium and everything else be light. So before we get into the gear and all the perks that we want, obviously, let's talk about the perks that you want on your weapons, because to me, that's a little bit more important. So in my opinion, the must-have perk on your bow is going to be vicious. So I know there are some talents inside of the bow tree that encourage you to go for headshots, but I find it much more difficult to actually land a headshot with the bow versus the musket. And I will find myself from time to time going for headshots with the bow, but it's a lot smoother gameplay to just roll and go for the body shot, get the guaranteed crit, and having that extra crit damage on the bow is definitely a huge bonus in my book. Now, if you are someone that strictly goes for headshots with the bow, you have absolutely crazy aim, definitely go for Vorpal instead of Vicious. It's going to help you out a ton. The next perk that I would seriously consider would be Keenly Jagged. On crit, you're going to cause a bleed on the target. In my opinion, I know there's a little bit of a debate between Keenly Jagged and something like Enchanted. I personally prefer Keenly Jagged because Enchanted requires you to hit follow-up shots. Keenly Jagged technically only requires you to hit one shot, and I have had instances where someone's low health, they're gonna get behind cover, I roll, get the pen shot, they're super low health, they get behind cover, and the bleed is actually the thing that kills them. So I know that that's a very unique situation. To me, I'd rather have Keenly Jagged be usable all of the time, even though I know it has a 10-second cooldown, Enchanted only being good on light and heavy attacks. I've heard some people say that it's bugged right now and it's applying to all damage rather than just light and heavy attacks. But if that is the case, it's more than likely going to get changed. And to give another example, if you're someone who can hit an early shot and then you struggle to hit some shot, say you roll and get a poison shot as a direct hit on someone, it's going to be the guaranteed crit. You have poison and you have Keenly Jagged running on someone. It may not seem like a ton of damage per tick, but trust me, over the entire course of both of those things running, it does add up. For my third perk, I got pretty lucky and got Enfeebling Poison Shot on this bow. If you go back and look at my montage video that I did for the bow spear though, this is not the bow that I had. I actually re-rolled to try to get one with either Enfeebling Poison Shot or Refreshing Penetrating Shot, just so I could free up another perk on my gear. For your weapons, I definitely highly suggest going for at least 2 perks. If you can get a legendary to get 3, really recommend, especially now that we know that we can upgrade our gear from 600, or as long as it's above 590 I believe, up to 625. To me, that is huge, and it completely changes my opinion on the amount of perks and what type of gear that you should be going after. Next, for my spear, I like Keen and Vicious. Again, Vicious, that crit damage, knowing that it can be applied from the front or the back, versus something like Rogue, which is your backstab damage, which can only be applied from hitting a backstab. Obviously, the backstab is going to give you a little bit more damage if you were playing Rogue, but again, I like Vicious being able to be applied from any direction, especially when you combo it with something like Keen, which is just your crit chance. I will note that if you were to have Keenly Jagged on your spear as well, I don't think it would be that good, just because the Keenly Jagged on your bow is actually a internal cooldown, meaning that you wouldn't be able to apply 2 stacks of Keenly Jagged, and you can't actually apply more than 1 stack of Keenly Jagged at a time. So say you had an A target and a B target. If I crit the A target, I can't automatically go and apply a Keenly Jagged also to the B target. I would have to wait for that 10-second duration, or the 10-second cooldown, for that first Keenly Jagged to run out on the A target to then go and be able to apply it to the B target. So hopefully that makes sense, and just in a nutshell, you can only have Keenly Jagged running at one time, so you only need it on one weapon. So as I was saying earlier about my opinion being changed on the way that we gear and the perks you want to go for, when I found out that we were going to be able to upgrade our gear as long as it's above 590 to 625, I now have the opinion that you should 100% be trying to at least go for gear that has 2 really good perks on it. My stance on the matter beforehand was essentially knowing that we were going to be replacing that 600 gear. If you had 600 gear, we were going to get a bump in gear score to 625. At the time, no one knew that we were going to be able to upgrade it. A couple of people had suspicions. I'm happy that that was confirmed, because if not, all of that time and gold that we spent grinding trying to get the perfect roll would have essentially been useless, because you're going to want a 625 piece when that gear came out. So if you want to go blow all of your money trying to get a god roll piece with 3 perfect stats, by all means go for it. It would definitely be worth it in the end. I highly suggest going for 2 perks. I still have the opinion that you really only need 1 perk to really have success in PvP, but having 2 is definitely going to be something where you might as well try to permanently gear yourself for the end game, knowing that we can upgrade that stuff in the future. So as I said, I have Enfeebling Poison Shot on my bow, which means I kind of have a throwaway piece, which, by the way, Enfeebling Poison Shot, it's good, but it's kind of a bait for the tooltip. This doesn't apply to everyone who gets poisoned. It doesn't even apply to anyone who gets poisoned. It only applies to the direct hit of poison shot. Only the single person that I hit with the direct hit of poison shot is going to get the weakened applied to them. So to me, is this a required perk? No, not really. I could not play this perk at all and be completely fine, but it is a nice thing to have if I happen to get the direct hit with poison shot. In my opinion, doing this Garden Keeper bow, I would have preferred to have gotten the refreshing penetrating shot, because to me that's kind of always required. I really like that, but it's not the end of the world, and I'm not going to be super picky getting enfeebling. But getting that on the bow again allows me to have kind of a throwaway piece, which is my helmet. So I do have refreshing flesh on here for when I decide to put on a rapier. I also really like that the second perk on this piece is freedom, which again can apply to regardless of what setup that I'm using. As you can see, it's 24 dex. I'm trying as much dexterity as possible once I get that 50 constitution. So not having con on a lot of your pieces of gear is definitely a highly recommended thing. For my chest piece, as you can see, I have refreshing penetrating shot on this and physical aversion, which is just taking less damage from range attacks, which I am someone that I actually like this perk because I will ego challenge people using a musket at far ranges. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. We don't really need to talk about it. But as you can see, with the new gear that didn't get grandfathered in, this is a perfect example. This was crafted today. The gear score is 599, but currently it's at 594. But that gear score will get adjusted to the average level of that expertise. So as you can see, we will be able to upgrade it with a new item or currency that's coming to the game, which again, highly recommend at least going for 2 perks on your pieces of gear. On my gloves, I have Fortifying Perforate, which is an insane perk that I highly recommend that you pick up. Every time you get a hit with your perforate, you're going to gain a stack of fortify. I have a clip in my montage for bow spear that if you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. I will have it linked at the end of the video down in the description below. There's a 1v2 that I do where I should have died, and the only reason I live is because I had a stack of fortify from getting my perforate off. Next, my second trait obviously being refreshing. It's a decent perk to have. It does stack, I believe, so if you can get those on multiple pieces, that's really good as well. Obviously, logging luck, trash perk in PvP, but it's whatever. It's a legendary. I got 2 perks, 25 dex, good enough for me. Next, on my legs, I have Energizing Evade Shot, which again, Evade Shot is one of my favorite perks. I absolutely love this ability. Being able to get 18 stamina after getting a hit with it just makes gameplay a lot smoother, especially when you're incorporating a lot of dodges. Vigor isn't a bad perk to have either. Reduction on burn, bleed, and poison. This can help give you a little bit more survivability, especially if you can get a couple of them stacked, but I don't think it is the best. In my opinion, I think freedom is the best, especially being in light gear. But if you do get vigor on a piece of gear, don't throw it away thinking it's useless. For my boots, you can see I have freedom again. Great perk to have. I love it. And the main perk that I have on my boots is Keen Vault Kick, which increases my random crit chance by 18% for 5 seconds after I land my kick. So next up for jewelry, I absolutely love comboing Purify and Health together. I think this is a great setup. I've had Purify save me many times. So I highly recommend that this is the main perk that you go for. Getting something like Health as your secondary perk, definitely encourage that as well. For my ring, I really like having Keen Awareness, especially with the bow going for body shots. As I said in my musket build video, if you're someone who's going to be going for a lot of headshots so you don't have to worry about critical strike chance, thrust damage is going to be the perk that you're going to want. For the second perk that I really encourage that you try to get is hardy. Having that increase of max stamina is really beneficial, especially when you combine it with nimble, which is one of the perks that I like having on my earring, which is just stamina regeneration. And then the main perk for my earring obviously is refreshing toast. So as you can see for gems though, in my jewelry I am running thrust gems just because I do like to have that extra protection against thrust. Primarily muskets, as I said, they're kind of big on the server that I'm playing on, and I do like to challenge. Playing with the bow though, I am very aggro and I like to play in melee range. So for the rest of my gear I have onyxes slotted in. So for me this makes the most sense to me, just in case I'm unlucky and I get caught out of position. This is still obviously going to apply to thrust damage, even though thrust is going to give me a little bit more running the emeralds. The reason I don't have any magical defense is, I'm not sure if you guys have run into this playing on your servers, but on my server there is a really nasty one shot with ice spike, and running 50 constitution, being in light gear, even if I have some magical gems slotted in, it really doesn't help. I still die. So I've kind of just convinced myself of not being in the position to get one shot. I don't have to worry about it. I'm confident in my aim that if I'm just having a range battle with someone who's using magical weapons, I can win that matchup just trading basic light attacks majority of the time. For the gem slot inside of my weapons though, I am running opals. Again, I think you are very much encouraged into incorporating a lot of dodges inside of the playstyle for bow spear. So not being at 100% stamina and getting a 15% damage increase to the weapon is just something that makes total sense to me. But that's pretty much it for everything for this build, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to check out some actual gameplay of it, I got some crazy clips. I will have my montage linked at the end, as I said before. I hope you found some stuff that was helpful that you can either apply to your gameplay or give you some things that you can think about that, you know, can lead you down the road to where you want to go. If you enjoyed this video or you did find it helpful though, please let me know by smashing that like button down below. If you enjoyed this content and you want to see more, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, find your way back to the channel. As always, just remember, the meta. I'll catch you in the next one.